Yeah.
Just a moment.
Andy, tell us about that. Where are we right now with the government shutdown?
We are where we have been since last week. There is no progress. I don't anticipate much movement in the coming days. Everyone has really dug in on their positions, and there's no negotiating going on. What's remarkable about this shutdown compared to 2018 is that time there was a group of bipartisan senators like toiling over the weekend, burning the midnight oil, trying to find a way out. No one was working this weekend on this. I mean, senators were sent home. The House has been out for 3 weeks. And that is because everyone kind of thinks they're winning the blame game. Everyone feels kind of confident about their positions. No lawmakers are feeling particular pressure yet, particular pain from voters. So until that happens, which probably won't happen until paychecks are missed, like the 15th, the 24th, I think that the pain level has to go up before we see anyone move from positions where they kind of think they're winning right now.
Yeah, you know, John, what's so fascinating is while you're going through this, and I can just speak for myself, when you're in the House, you think this is the most important thing in the world. And it takes you a couple months to realize nobody knows what we're doing up here. They see their headlines. And this is a headline. Well, and it's one of the reasons I always say Republicans lose these things. The headline is Donald Trump is president. Republicans run the Senate. Republicans run the House.
The government shut down.
Conservatives control the Supreme Court, dominate the Supreme Court. Republicans control the bureaucracy. Republicans have a monopoly of power in Washington. And oh, yeah, the government doesn't work. The government shut down. I'm sorry. That just doesn't, like, somebody that's working like a midnight shift and comes home, they're not going, let's see, is this a clean CR or not? I think Mike Johnson gave them a clean. No, what they're seeing is Republicans run everything. They've slashed $1 trillion in health care coverage for Americans, and Democrats are trying to get it back for them. I don't see how that ends up being a winning hand for Republicans. Much better that they talk about crime than have this debate over how they've slashed $1 trillion in health care.
I think there's even a meta headline that exists above those headlines. That's even for most people who actually really... You know, most people don't know who their congressman is. Okay?
Most people work for a living and are not like,
and just are not engaged in this. They're watching football. They're watching Major League Baseball playoffs. The meta headline is, for the last 8 months, Washington belongs to Donald Trump. That's what people think. Most people this is the Trump era for ordinary voters. That's all they see. Trump's running roughshod, doing what he wants to do. Whether you like that or don't like that, you think Trump is in control. Why is it the government not getting funded? Mike Johnson this morning with Ali Vitale said a sentence to your point about the clean CR. Right. As soon as you hear anybody say, we gave them a clean CR, I'm like, okay, you've lost the debate. But he also said, when Ali made the point you just made, she said, you know, Republicans run the House, Republicans run the Senate. Well, he said, well, Ali, anybody who studies civics knows that we need 60 votes, which means that we need 60. I'm like, anybody who studies civics.
We've been complaining how nobody studies civics for like a generation now.
Again, I say most American voters cannot name their congressman. The 60 vote threshold, the clean CR, those are terms of debate. If you were citing any of those things, you were losing the debate. And I think, you know, to the point of, you know, going back to 2018, 35 days, which took place after the midterms, when it was clear Democrats were retaking control of the House of Representatives. The politics now are so much more forbidding, are so much less likely to yield. At that point, it was Nancy Pelosi arriving in Washington, and taking control of the House that broke the 35-day longest shutdown in history, 35 days. This time, what are the incentives for a Democratic Party that is fighting on the grounds of health care right now? But truly, the party is really animated by something equally simple, which is, and much more overarching, which is, we don't want to fund this government when it is doing what it's doing with ICE, when it's doing much more fundamental things. Democrats are not in a mood because of what they've seen over the last 8 months. And again, you can criticize this or not criticize it, but the healthcare thing is the thing. But we have to say something. We have to negotiate. We have to give. We want to fight over something that's popular for us. Well, you're right. But the reality is they don't want really to fund this
We are now 5 days into a government shutdown with no end in sight, and voters are still pinning most of the blame on the GOP. According to a new CBS poll, 39% of voters say President Trump and Republicans should be held responsible, while 30% say Democrats are to blame and 31% say both parties are at fault here. Here's what House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and Speaker Mike Johnson had to say about where negotiations stand.
Republicans, including Donald Trump, have gone radio silent. And what we've seen is negotiation through deep fake videos, the House canceling votes, and of course, President Trump spending yesterday on the golf course. That's not responsible behavior.
We need the month of October to figure this out. There's a lot of thought that's gone into that on both sides of the aisle, but we need folks in good faith to come around the table and have that discussion, and we can't do it when the government is shut down.
And joining us now is former Texas Congressman Colin Allred. He's now running in the Democratic primary for the 2026 Texas Senate race. Colin, it's good to have you. Thanks for joining us tonight. So, look, Texas Republicans are already trying to pin all of this on the Democrats. John Cornyn, Ted Cruz saying things like this is the Schumer shutdown. So what are you hearing from your constituents about how they're processing this, who they hold as accountable, and what do you think Democrats need to do next?
Well, thanks for having me on. I was just in the Valley in South Texas talking to folks about this, and folks are obviously very aware that the government has shut down. I'm talking to Border Patrol agents and officers with the Customs Department who are not going to be getting paid. But we're also saying, hey, listen, Democrats were there last week to negotiate. They're going to be there next week to negotiate. The Republicans have to come negotiate for this. If they want to have Democratic votes, then they have to say what they're willing to negotiate with us for. And to me, there's nothing more important than fighting to stop some of these incredibly draconian healthcare cuts that are going to
Trump era, Donald Trump has always been able, Mark Leibovich, to have fights. He's been brilliant figuring out how to fight on his terrain. Here, they're fighting on the Democrats' terrain. $1 trillion in cuts for health care. $1 trillion in tax cuts for the richest billionaires on the planet, for multinational corporations, for monopolists. They don't want to fight on this ground. And, you know, as John said, Americans, they're not wondering whether the CR is clean or not. They're seeing their grocery prices still skyrocketing. They're seeing gas prices still going up.
A burger is $35 at a restaurant.
Well, it's an expensive burger.
Well,
don't go to that restaurant.
Don't go to that restaurant. They're seeing rent. They're seeing rent.
Can't buy a house. Going
up. If you're under 45, chances are very good you're struggling to buy a home, struggling to make ends meet. And yeah, healthcare costs are just exploding, and they're only going to get worse because rural hospitals are going to be shut down. $150 billion, the Congressional Budget Office says, is being slashed from healthcare providers. $500 billion being slashed because of the Republicans' bill, being slashed from subsidies, healthcare subsidies for the Affordable Care Act. You can keep going. It adds up to $911 billion in total. And there ain't a whole lot of line items about illegal immigrants there. I mean, this is, again, I don't think this is the ground Republicans want to fight on.
Well, I mean, I think Republicans, and particularly Trump, sees their ground as just messaging per se. They think that it is possible, regardless of the substance here, regardless of what the line items are, regardless of how it's affecting people in their everyday lives, that they can win just by force of Donald Trump's communication skills, by force of his will to the Congress. And frankly, I mean, to sort of to John's point, I mean, people do walk around Washington these days basically terrified of Donald Trump. Certainly Republicans do. I mean, he has brought that party to heel in a way that we haven't seen a Republican or Democratic president do in their own caucus for a long, long time. And you know, Democrats are in a very reactive mode. They're certainly angry. They're certainly fed up with dealing with Republicans. They're certainly putting their hands up here. And I do think
what we just heard really highlights the stark reality of the current government shutdown. Unlike the 2018 shutdown, where bipartisan negotiation happened even over weekends, this time there's virtually no movement. Lawmakers on both sides seem entrenched, more focused on playing the political blame game than addressing the very real consequences of a non-functioning government. What's particularly striking is how detached much of the political maneuvering is from everyday Americans. While politicians debate clean CRs or vote schedules, ordinary citizens are facing skyrocketing grocery and gas prices, unaffordable rents, and rising healthcare costs. The Congressional Budget Office projects nearly $1 trillion in healthcare cuts under the current proposals, hitting rural hospitals and working families the hardest. These are tangible consequences, yet they often get lost in political talking points and partisan spin. Another key point from the discussion is accountability. Republicans currently control the White House, the Senate, the House, and even the Supreme Court, effectively holding every levers of power. Yet, the narrative some are pushing attempts to shift blame to Democrats. Polling suggests voters largely see it differently, with a significant portion holding Trump and Republicans responsible. That disconnect between power and responsibility is central to understanding why this shutdown feels so different and potentially more damaging than previous ones. Ultimately, this situation isn't just about political theater, it's about the real impact on people's lives. Negotiations are stalled, essential workers aren't getting paid, and everyday Americans are left to absorb the consequences. It's a stark reminder that political strategy has human costs, and until leaders prioritize governing over positioning, the pain will only deepen.